We made a commitment. All of our family knows that we would walk away from the business before we let it come between us. And to me, hourly work, being paid by the hour and having billable hours is at odds with the client. Like, the more time you spend working on something, the more you make. Client wants you to spend less time on it because they don't want the bill that comes with it. One of my marketing mentors used to say, basically, he who is willing and able to spend the most to acquire a customer wins. If you and I are competitors, and you can spend $10 to acquire a new customer, and you can only spend 10 to be profitable, but I can spend 15 and I can be profitable, I'm going to grow faster than you and bigger than you because I can outspend you and beat you when it comes to getting that customer.
Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Welcome back to the Disruptive Successor Show. Today we're talking about something that quietly drains more family wealth than bad strategy, poor leadership, or even sibling conflict. And that's marketing. Not marketing as a tactic, but marketing as capital allocation. In family businesses, every dollar spent carries emotional weight. It's not just money, it's legacy, it's risk tolerance, it's generational trust. And when that capital gets burned on big retainers with vague promises and no measurable return, it doesn't just hurt the balance sheet, it strains relationships. My guest today, Casey O'Quinn, knows this world intimately. He's the founder of Gravity Digital, a family-owned agency serving family-owned direct-to-consumer brands. For 25 years, he's worked alongside his father, his wife, his sister, cousins, and in-laws, navigating not just growth and marketing, but the complexity of family dynamics in business. Frustrated by agencies that took big retainers without accountability, Casey built his firm on a revenue share model, meaning his team only gets paid when their clients grow. That alignment changes behavior, incentives, and outcomes. I can tell you firsthand. So today, we're going to explore patience, education, transparency, testing, and metrics, and why marketing discipline may be one of the most overlooked leadership skills in generational businesses. If you care about protecting family capital while scaling revenue, this is an important conversation. So let's get into it. Casey, I'm going to start with the obvious. You've worked with your father, your wife, your sister, cousins, in-laws. That's not a marketing agency. That's Thanksgiving dinner with a payroll.
That's the truth, isn't it?
What's the biggest lesson you've learned working with family for 25 years?
It's a great question. I'm very fortunate. I have a wonderful family, very close-knit family. And so it's been a joy more than anything else to work with family. That's been in a variety of different things. Obviously, with Gravity Digital, we also own a healthcare company and then real estate with my dad. And so have gotten to do just a bunch of really good and fulfilling things with family. And in terms of challenges, there's always challenges. There's always tension and friction, just like in any business. But we made a commitment. All of our family knows that we would walk away from the business before we let it come between us. And so I think when you have, it's, for some people, that's kind of shocking to hear that. But if you look at it another way, you say, boy, I think they're going to work it out then because, this is their livelihood. They're probably not going to walk away from this. And so, yeah, if you're willing to close the doors, you usually learn how to resolve things carefully. And we try to head that off before it ever happens. We're very transparent with each other, share our feelings, stress levels, challenges. And so I think we kind of head a lot of that off at the pass. But most of all, I'm just very fortunate to have a wonderful family.
Well, it sounds more than just having a lot of woo at business meetings and family meetings where it's a love fest. You have to work through some tough stuff. But all right, what's harder, marketing or family alignment?
But marketing for us, it's a changing game. We're pretty aligned as a family. We've been doing this a long time, and so we have our responsibilities. We know how we what our giftings are and what we're good at, and we let each other excel at that and try not to step on toes. But marketing, on the other hand, that's a boy. We walk in every morning and we say what changed because Google changed something while we slept, or Facebook changed while we slept, and you got to figure out what changed. And so that's always the challenge.
Well, I think what's going to be really interesting about our conversation is I led with a pretty strong opening around, marketing is one of the things that really drains family wealth. And, maybe I overstated it. Maybe most family businesses don't fail because of marketing, but they fail because of a misalignment around marketing expectations, money to spend, money to invest. You know, I used to say that the two most important things you need to invest in is like leadership, which would be training and development, and marketing. And even Peter Drucker, the great Peter Drucker said, marketing and innovation like produce results. Everything else is just a cost. So yeah, so let's talk about let's I don't know, maybe you have a comment on that, and then we'll talk about agencies and the problem with agencies. But
No, I agree. I agree with what you said. Absolutely. And so, yeah, for us, we try to look at marketing as an investment in the business, and that's where your growth is going to come from. As long as you do it right, it can also, like you said, drain capital. So, yeah, we'll get into all of that. That sounds great.
yeah, yeah, and I think one of the reasons, and I think this is fair to say, one of the reasons that family businesses and entrepreneurial businesses may complain about marketing is because they've had a bad experience. I know I've had a slew of bad experiences, but you gotta have the mindset. I think we're going to have fun at this, and we're going to experiment, and we test, measure, you know, take baby steps. Sometimes it requires a bigger investment if you're putting assets together. But, you know, I'm sure you've seen and heard all the stories from prospects who maybe became clients, prospects who didn't become clients. What frustrates you and maybe these people about traditional agencies?
Yeah. So and we started as a more traditional agency. Well, first off, we started 25 years ago. We predate Facebook. We almost predate Google. And so we were very much more traditional. A lot of television commercials, radio, print, and now we've transitioned and we're mainly digital. And so we've had to evolve with that. But if you look at the traditional, agency, you've got a retainer. Oftentimes, it might even be hourly work. And to me, hourly work, being paid by the hour and having billable hours is at odds with the client. Like the more time you spend working on something, the more you make. Client wants you to spend less time on it because they don't want the bill that that comes with it. And so that's always put things at odds, or even a retainer where, you're when you're defining a retainer, you're doing it at a moment in time when you will never know less about each other as agency and client. And so you're saying, this is what we're going to work on for the next 6 months, the next year, when that could totally change once you get involved and you learn the business. 6 weeks in, you could realize we need to be doing something very different. Yet you've got this agreement that you've made, a retainer that kind of defines the scope of services. So for us, that's when we looked at that revenue share model. First off, we only get paid on growth, but also it opens up our entire playbook to us. Anything is on the table to us, and we're willing to invest in it. If we see there's an opportunity and we can bring growth, we know that we're gonna. It's a risk reward. We know we're gonna get rewarded for it. we're often investing our own dollars, whether it's shooting video, producing a new piece of creative, rebuilding a website from the ground up. We're footing the bill for that, and we do that because our vectors are aligned. We're going in the same direction with the client, and we all want to see that growth. And so that's the reason I kind of came up with that model. And I'll tell you this: when I present it to a potential client, to a prospect on a Zoom call, I kind of show them our playbook and exactly what we do. And when I show them that revenue share, they say, "This is what I've been looking for: someone who will put their money where their mouth is, and not charge me a retainer, which we're going to get no results in 3 months. I'm going to move on. They're going to move on. I want someone who's in it for the long haul." And they say, "This is what I've been looking for: someone who would do something like this."
I think that's brilliant. And it's a much bigger risk than say let's take the analogy of a real estate broker or a mortgage broker. They only get paid if the transaction happens. And, so you didn't have to pay them a retainer. And I know that they're taking a small slice of what could be a very big number. Um, but you're putting a lot of sweat equity into situations, it sounds like, where you're doing video or website development, um, which is a lot of hours. And so when you talk about burning family capital and what that looks like, is that what you're talking about? Is traditional agencies taking family businesses retainers and burning through that? Is that part of what,
Yeah,
or is there something more to it?
no, you've got that right. So wasting dollars on marketing, whether it's going in and selling someone a harebrained idea for a crazy video and getting them to spend all the production dollars on that, and it not panning out, it falling flat or not resonating with the audience, and poof, it's gone. And so that's what I hate to see. It kind of sticks in my craw a little bit when I see people get sold something and it not be proven. And so we like testing early, kind of finding our way, understanding the audience and the messaging, and that's one way to kind of protect that. I think of I think of businesses, especially when we're talking about family businesses, kind of like the family farm. Like if we were to look back 100 years ago, the family farm was something you handed down to the next generation, and the next they grew up working on it, and then they take it over. And so to me, protecting that business is kind of like protecting the family farm. You hate to sell off 100 acres of it here and there, as it goes on, because it gets smaller and smaller. So to me, protect the family farm. That's the family business, and we want to make sure we do that. We don't burn through capital or have to sell part of it or something like that. Because I love the idea of generational businesses.
Well, you and I share that, and that's why we're on the show together today. And I often use that same analogy, which is I think one of the tensions between the founder or the current generation, maybe predecessor, and the successor is the successor didn't go through the hard work to build that business, and they're more willing to bet the family farm. It's an easier bet for them. And the patriarch, let's call it, or the predecessor, they're much more cautious. They don't want to bet the family farm. They don't want to take out, um, a loan to invest in something if it's not a more of a sure thing. When you're 60, you make different decisions than when you're 30. There's different calculus on your lifespan and the money you're going to need. So you and I both understand and speak that same language. Are are family businesses, do you think, more vulnerable to bad marketing spends than just your regular entrepreneurial businesses? You know?
I wouldn't say that, but I do think you kind of mentioned the multi generation or maybe a first generation, second generation. I think they have a unique challenge, and that is you do when you're like you said, when you're 60, you have a different appetite for risk, and things like that. But also, technology has changed so much, and the way we market has changed, and so trying to explain Instagram ads or TikTok ads to the previous generation is difficult, and it can be very challenging. And so I think that's one of those things where you've got to have a lot of patience to bring them along, and you got to get those early wins and demonstrate the results. And that's one of the key challenges I see is maybe not that they're more vulnerable, but it can be harder to bring them along and to get the whole family to buy in.
Yeah. Well, I imagine you've probably experienced this in your own businesses and ventures with your family, but like there's an emotional cost when marketing doesn't work. And in a family business, now you're sitting around the Thanksgiving dinner table and like it could lead to pointing fingers if things got, you know, if everyone drank too much and started throwing pie at each other. Is there, what's, do you have any stories or thoughts or, anything to share in that area about like the
Well,
emotional cost of families?
we've done that in our own business, of course. Made marketing decisions and tried things that didn't work. I think we have a pretty healthy view of it. Um, uh, Great book, John Maxwell, Failing Forward.
Mm.
So for us, we kind of, those mistakes, those things that kind of trip you up. I mean, I've owned Gravity Digital for 25 years. We don't look anything like we did when we started, and I think it's just been a series of failing forwards, where things didn't work and you have to pivot. And so I think we look at it that way, and so we don't have as much of the pointing fingers. If we are going to try something, we've thoroughly talked about it. We understand what we're all on the same page. We are gonna try it, and so we kind of fail together. Is the way
Yeah.
we look at it.
Yeah. I've worked with a lot of landscaping companies over many years, and I see families in the same business debate equipment purchases for months, but sign five-figure marketing retainers without clarity, or vice versa,
Mm,
you know? And like, and I've known entrepreneurs who were like, "Well, I'd rather just buy equipment, like, because that can make me money." And versus, not invest anything in marketing. It's what, do you see and experience any of that tension between where they spend their money? I mean, they've always got to
yeah,
choose between you and maybe doing nothing or allocating their money if it's tight on something else.
Very much. I think, most of the people that come to us, they're looking for growth. And so, is that new piece of equipment going to bring you new customers? Perhaps. Maybe if it's especially if it's helping you offer a new product or a new service. But but what if nobody knows about it? And you've got that new product or new service that no one knows about. So usually when we're talking to people, they're growth minded and they want to answer that question of how do we get more customers? And so they're usually looking to invest in marketing, but we also have to prove that to them that our kind of our playbook that we like to use can answer that question of can you get me new customers?
Well, look, I'm a big fan of the revenue share model. Um, of course, it's not protectable. Anyone can start, or everyone can start offering that same thing. But nonetheless, there aren't many people that are doing it, and it certainly protects their margins and their capital. How does it change the way your team behaves or makes choices around what to invest their time, who to take on as a client, what to invest their time in? I mean, you've got to make some difficult choices sometimes about whether you take on a client, how deep you go into it. What, uh, what can you share from
Yeah,
the,
the
behavior?
first part of your question was around mindset,
Mhm.
and it's a big thing for us. If you look at a retainer based model, you often have agreed ahead of time to what you're going to be doing for a client. So in marketing, you might be doing a certain number of social media posts or sending a certain number of emails, and so really you're checking the boxes and your pay is the same, no matter what happens. With a revenue share model, we have a lot of incentive.
Mhm.
Our team, we feel like kind of guardians of that brand, of that business, and we feel like part of the team. And our clients enjoy that they know we have skin in the game. Like we can pivot at any time. We can choose to invest if we
Mhm.
see a creator that we think matches up well, and we want to go pay to have some videos done. We invest in it, and they like that. They know that we're putting our own money in the game, and into the marketing. And so I think that's a really big deal to have those, like I said, alignment where we're all wanting to grow and we're all looking at the numbers on a near daily basis to make sure we're growing.
Mm. So what kind of a client is not a fit for your model? What
Oh,
points
the
that?
first thing,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll tell you this: when I get a prospect, one of the first things I do is I'm going to go see if I can find reviews of their product. So if they're selling on Amazon or their website, I might jump on Reddit. I might jump on Google. I want to see product reviews.
Mm.
So the first thing I will say, and it's a principle I learned long ago, and it's that good marketing can't fix a bad product. So I need to see we've got a good product. If we've got a bunch of 2-star reviews on Amazon or something like that, it's not a winning product, and there's nothing I'm going to be able to do. They need to fix the product, and so that's the first thing that I do. The next thing that I'm looking for is, where are we present? How are we marketing? What is left on the table to be done? Are there things that they're doing that they're not doing well? And what we typically find is they are perhaps digitally immature, meaning they haven't really embraced all the different kinds of online marketing. So maybe they don't have an email list. They're not sending emails to their list. Maybe they're not running ads. Maybe on their website we look at it and they are not doing everything they can to increase the average order value. They don't have any upsells or something like that. So really, just a hefty audit to see what we can do to help them improve. And if we see that, hey, there's good work that can be done here, that's when we would jump in. But like I said, the first thing is the reviews. I want to see we've got a winning product, and then what I'll know is, hey, they've got a great product. They just have made some mistakes, or they aren't properly investing in marketing yet, and we know we can help them grow.
Do you find ever that there's opportunities to sit down with their customer service people, their order takers, and coach them on upselling or, without being pushy? Because that's a certain one of the methods that's going to help them grow. If they can sell
Yes.
more at a higher price.
Absolutely. So because we're digital and we're talking, websites like Shopify or WooCommerce websites, we do most of that digitally. But we haven't always been purely digital. I worked with a lot of brick and mortar and a lot of small businesses, a lot of B2B, and scripting was very important. And giving those salespeople, giving those customer service people the specific thing to say. I worked at in the food court when I was 16 at a mall selling cookies, and I mean, it was drilled into us when someone you know ordered a medium soda. It was, and I remember to this day, did you know you can get a large for 10 cents more? And if you did not upsell
Yeah.
a customer and a manager was nearby, you were going to get an earful, because that 10 cents adds up. And
Sure.
they really wanted us to be doing that. So yes, that scripting and talking to those customer service people, that's a great way to squeeze just a little bit of extra revenue. You did all that work to get that customer in front of you,
Right.
and you spent all that money to acquire that customer. What can you do to just bring a little more value to them?
Do you find that you work in many situations, speaking of food and food courts, because there's some really good food brands out there that have very old school style packaging. I remember I used to be a big fan of a potato knish, and it had a little boy with a striped T-shirt from the 1960s on the front, and it was easy to find because it was a frozen potato knish, and I don't know who doesn't like a good frozen potato knish, but the packaging was really outdated. So it wasn't just about it was way beyond digital. It was about repackaging their stuff, and and then you might find a lot of really good reviews on a product like that, but recognize that their presentation is stale. I would think.
Yeah, we often will look at a website for our businesses, the website is their business. For all intents and purposes, when someone arrives at the website, that's their only going to be their only involvement until a product shows up, on their doorstep. And so we want to make sure we're putting our best foot forward there. We do have one client, Sport Tea. It's a herbal tea. That's great for hydration and energy. It's very cool. We love food and beverage clients because the lifetime value is usually very high.
Right.
And so you can make a good investment, acquire a customer, and know you're going to have them for a long time. Their packaging is some of my favorite. I wish I had a box on my desk to show you, but their packaging is outstanding. The product's been around for almost 40 years, and I
Mm,
don't think the packaging has changed very much. It's
amazing.
great, but it's one of those. To me, it kind of has a classic look to it, and where some people might say it could be a little bit dated. To me, it's kind of endearing. That shows this product has stood the test of time. It's unchanged. Formula is unchanged for almost 40 years. So, yeah.
Mm, amazing. I mean, I think of a family business in this area, Dr. Bronner's soaps. They're
Oh,
clear
yes.
soap, they're liquid soaps. I mean, that packaging goes back. It's so old.
That
It's so
packaging, you could not squeeze another word into any of their packaging. I know exactly what you're talking about, but it's one of the endearing things. Like, you pick up the bottle and you'll rotate it for 5 minutes, reading everything that it has to say.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty crazy. All right, I'm gonna push you a little slightly here. So you've taken on a client, you're working with them, growth is stalling. What happens? The revenue share, does it ever create tension in a team? Like,
Uh, generally no. For this reason, when we onboard a client, we usually set their existing revenue aside. That's a baseline. We don't touch any share of what they were making before they came to us. So
no, of
we'll
course.
typically, yeah. So we'll look at like a 12-month average and say, okay, anything under that dollar amount, our revenue share doesn't apply to. It only applies over that. And so the good news is, as we bring growth, they're obviously we say we're looking for a win-win when we're talking about the percentages. It's different for every single client. We have them look at their COGS, look at those things. We don't know those things. We don't know what works for them. And so
Mhm.
we have them kind of help come up with that. And then we agree on it. And it's usually a win win. We tell them, we want you happy to send us that check every month because
Right.
you're making more money. And so that's typically the way we look at it.
But there's times when it may not, like, right? The client
Yeah.
isn't growing, and then you've got to cut bait at some point, which is maybe a difficult conversation, I would think.
It is, yeah, and we're usually pretty transparent though. We've had clients in the past where we're not able to move the needle as much as we had wanted to, and a lot of it stemmed from the average order value, what it costs to acquire a customer, and then their average order value. They got very few repeat. Just the nature of the product, they didn't get a lot of repeat purchases, and so we kind of let them know, I'm not sure we're going to be able to do what we want to do for here, and I don't see you being able to. Uh, scale this
Right.
with this kind of marketing and this kind of relationship. So there are times when we've definitely had to do that. Other times, it might start a little bit slow. We might work for 2 or 3 months before we ever see a penny because we're putting a lot of foundational things in place and then helping to make sure we are kind of dotting those I's and crossing those T's, the things that we know need to be done, making that investment. And it's going to come somewhere down the road. And we're great with that. We believe in our team. We know what we're doing. We're very confident, and so it can be a little bit of a lag before we ever start seeing that growth. The other thing I would say is just learning seasonality. Some businesses, just the nature of their product, they've got some seasonality, and so we've had to learn. Hey, in the winter months, this client might do so well. So we work with them to say, hey, we would like to, in terms of your annual ad spend, how much we spend on ads, we'd like to pull that down in the winter months. And we'd like to move it to the summer months where we can really capitalize on that. And they're great with that. They love learning those insights and saying, hey, we understand, like, why are we trying to convince someone to buy during the hardest part of the year for us when we could just put more assets into the other times of year and really, just work with the seasonality rather than try to fight it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, ideally, in a business model like yours, if you could align employee compensation and owner compensation to your clients, if they make money, you make money. If they don't make money, you don't make money or more money. And but that's difficult. Most people today's age want to count on a paycheck. They've got a mortgage, a rent payment, something. Um, but ideally, that would be great. So, all right,
Yeah.
let's get into some high level like teaching here. Um,
Okay.
I think you talked to me about a 7-figure blueprint. So,
Yeah.
um, if you could give some of what that framework looks like, because I think this is helpful to listeners as they think about hiring or marketing agency, or even before they just think about investing in marketing, they need to think in terms of a framework of how do you even approach the market with a beginner's mind, if you will, a fresh
Yeah.
look. Yeah.
That's great.
What, so you have the
What I would,
7-figure blueprint, right? Do you want to
we
start
do.
with the
Yeah, I'll break it
that?
down, and yeah, we start with a formula, and I think it's healthy to look at that formula. We didn't invent this formula. You and I have talked about it before. It's private equity. Everybody uses this to kind of value businesses, and it's a great model to look at. You might have seen it under different names, but for us, it's pretty simple. It's customers times frequency times average order value equals your revenue. Now we look at that through a marketing lens, and so we say, customers. For us, we need to solve for new customers. We ask the question, how do customers happen in a business? It's a very important question to ask and to be able to answer. There are a lot of ways in marketing, SEO, organic. There's a lot of different things that you can do. For us and for a business who's looking at applying this, I would look at ads. The reason I say ads is because it's scalable. You never know when an organic social media post is going to go viral, or why does one social post get 10 times more attention than another? It's hard to replicate that. Ads you can replicate, you can scale those. And so in terms of customers, that's the biggest place I have people look first. Frequency is the next lever that we're looking at. And for us, that's going to be email and SMS, because to be able to reach back out to someone who has bought and to get them to buy again. I mean, the cheapest customer you'll ever get is the one you already have. And so how can you add more value, bring more to them, whether you're doing an email campaign or even automating it? If you know customers order your product every 3 months, are you reaching back out and making sure you're taking advantage of those opportunities? And then we mentioned like upsells on the website. That's the average order value I'm talking about. So
Right.
what else can you do to bring value? And I don't mean just upselling, but look, if they're buying product A, and you know that customers typically buy product B with it, and it makes it actually a little bit better if they do that, can you discount it a little bit and get that in their hands as well and give them a really good experience? So that's probably oversimplified, but that's real. That really is how we look at it.
No, that's good. It reminds me of the phrase on the infomercial. But wait, there's more.
Exactly right. Exactly
You
right.
order this now and you'll get two for the price of one,
Hey,
plus
more.
free shipping and
That's
handling.
those upsells. The more of the same is always the first one you start with. If it makes sense, can you sell them a little bit more of the same thing?
Yeah. Um, where do founders get, or the owners that are making the decisions on your investment? Like, where do they get impatient in this process?
Actually, so here's the funny thing. It's usually the other way around. It's not so much impatient. It's rarely a problem, but people say we don't want to grow too quick because they're dealing with a lot of headaches that, especially in e-commerce, inventory. They have lead time. A lot of them are dealing with tariffs and things right now, and so they really need time to make sure they have the inventory. So what they're looking for is kind of that slow, steady growth. We have some clients where in the first few months we're doubling their business. Oftentimes there's just some really low hanging fruit and quick wins. We can't usually sustain that, but most of our clients, they really like the idea of like a 30% growth month though. Like, could we maintain 30% growth? And that's what we're aiming for. Like, we want to see if we can help them maintain that. They can plan better, manage capital, manage inventory. We just had a client have to knock out some walls and get some more warehouse space, which is a wonderful problem. But we have to realize, oh, that's a real thing. We just see what happens online. We see that the ads are working and that we're selling more. They have real world problems that they're helping. Machines are breaking that they've got to replace. And so we really have to have good conversations with them and work carefully and make sure we're scaling them at an appropriate rate.
And,
And it's
and who's your typical point of contact, Casey? Is it a marketing manager or director with a marketing title? Is it the owner? Is it a committee? What's your
It's
general?
almost always the owner. It's almost always the family. Sometimes a couple family members at the very top.
Okay.
Marketing can be a big investment, and depending on the size of the business, they may not. We may be their marketing team. They may not have anything in house. I mean, the overall responsibilities of marketing fall to someone, but they're getting a whole team. They don't know how to. They usually don't know how to run. Facebook ads. They don't know how to send these emails and segment their list and build all of these automations and write code for the website. So they're usually we're coordinating with them, but honestly, our team's the kind of the one doing all the work, and we're usually dealing with the people at the very top.
So, in addition to these three simple metrics or values that you gave, customers, would it be average order size and frequency?
Average order value and frequency. You got it.
Gotcha. Um, are there other numbers that you feel family business owners should understand? That's really
Yeah.
important.
Yes, and chief among them is what we call new customer acquisition cost.
Mhm.
In the marketing world, we call it NCAC because we like acronyms.
Right, right.
But
CAC,
new,
I've heard
new
an NCAC. Okay.
yeah, CAC is good, but in CAC, I want to know how much does it cost us to acquire a new customer?
Hmm.
That's a very important number because we're spending money. We might be spending number on connected TV ads, on Facebook ads, on Google. We might be doing some organic SEO. We might have paid a creator to post about our product. We could be doing a lot of things, but to be able to say this is how much we spent on marketing, how many new customers did we get? And then we get our new customer acquisition cost. So we're looking at that every month. How much did we spend this month on marketing? How many new customers did we get? How much did it cost us to acquire that customer? That's a very important number. And that's the number the people at the top that I talked about, that's a number that we encourage them to look at to say, what can we stand? How much can we spend to acquire a customer? If we are looking at the lifetime value, how much someone spends with us, while they're a customer, how much can we spend to acquire them? And a lot of people want to push that number down and say, I want to spend as little as possible to acquire a customer. And while I can appreciate that, I often encourage them to look at it the other way around. How much can you spend to acquire a customer? Because when it comes to your competitors, if you can be profitable at a higher acquisition cost than they can, you're going to scale further and better than they are. And so those are healthy conversations to have. And NCAC is one of my favorite numbers to look at when it comes to e-commerce.
So explain that last little piece again, because it sounded counterintuitive. If you're going,
It is counterintuitive.
it,
Yeah, one of my marketing mentors used to say basically, he who is willing and able to spend the most to acquire a customer wins. So if I can, if you and I are competitors, and you can spend $10 to acquire a new customer, and you can only spend 10 to be profitable, but I can spend 15 and I can be profitable. I'm going to grow faster than you and bigger than you because I can outspend you and beat you when it comes to getting that customer.
that makes sense. So a couple other things that you talked about, I think we should point out, I assume are important business owner metrics. And that one would be lifetime value of a customer.
Yes.
Um, and churn would be another one if you've got any, recurring customers, like how often do they reorder? How often do they disappear? Um, any others that we they
I love lifetime value. That's what puts your NCAC in perspective.
Yes.
If you don't have lifetime value, then the NCAC doesn't do you much good. You mentioned new versus returning customers. That's on a dashboard that we're looking at every day for each of our clients. Those really are the big ones. There is, when it comes to digital marketing, we have what we call ROAS, return on ad spend, and I like that number. But what I have found is that the platforms. Uh, Apple, all devices, they're trying to protect privacy. And so if you really kind of read between the lines, a lot of the ROAS numbers that we look at are kind of models. They're not accurate. And in addition, if you think about the average journey online, you may have seen a commercial on your TV, and then you got retargeted on Facebook, and then you did a Google search. It's actually lots of places that you had touch points with that customer before they came to you. But I can tell you, Google's going to claim it, uh, Facebook's going to claim it, and so that those ROAS numbers can be skewed a little bit. And so I don't mind looking at a blended ROAS where we take all of our ad spend on those platforms and calculate it that way. I think that's a healthy number. But when I do show ROAS to clients, I'm always careful to kind of make sure I manage their expectations and say, this is a model. This is not. Don't take this as gospel.
Yeah. And if you like this, I can show you some oceanfront property in Arizona. Sorry for the joke. So yeah, I was thinking about this as you were talking earlier about NCAC, because I really think what's interesting or important to know is what's the NCAC per channel. Is it the TV ad? Is it was it the email that we sent out? Was it, what was it? And most people will say, yeah, you've got to be hit almost like three different times from three different places with sort of three different
At
maybe
least,
messages.
yes.
Where all of a sudden you think, oh, God, Gravity Digital, they're ubiquitous. They're the agency that we want to hire, or whatever the product is. Um, but it's really difficult if you're limited to a model. to explain where it's coming
Yeah,
from, then it's still just
what you're referring to,
guessing. Yeah.
it is, yeah. What you're referring to is called, omni-channel attribution. It's lots of places, and so there's a lot of software out there now. You can pay for a lot of software that will take all of your data and basically try to deduplicate it and figure out where did this person actually come from, and then maybe show you charts about, oh, this person was actually these three channels. And so there's some good sources for stuff like that. For most of our founders and owners, that might be getting a little bit into the weeds. We will look at data like that, and then try to guide ad spend. But usually that's pretty in depth. But yeah, we do use software like that to help us kind of dive into that and understand what's driving like our net new customers.
Yeah. So a lot of my listeners are pretty familiar with EOS. It's the entrepreneurial
Oh
operating
yeah.
system. You are as well. Um, and generically talking about putting a business operating system, we're talking about putting rocks or what would be quarterly priorities, scorecards, accountability. Where do you see marketing fitting inside of an operating system?
Oh, it's great. Well, so for for us, we follow EOS, and so
Okay.
we're kind of wrapping up. We're what, almost 2/3 of the way through Q1, so we've got our rocks. We know what we're working on. Some of them are marketing related, and so I absolutely believe it should be on there. It should be on your scorecard. You should be tracking some of those things. So someone should have a number that they own
Yeah.
on an EOS scorecard. But it can be as simple as a spreadsheet as well. For marketing, we do often break it down and we'll create a little bit different scorecard. And it's those week over week numbers. And it would kind of map to more of like a customer journey.
Mm.
So everything from, how many new visitors did we get to our website? How many email clicks did we get? Things that are relevant to whatever your marketing journey might be. And so I definitely think it has a place. If you were to look at it in the spirit of EOS and people having one number that they're responsible for. It could be NCAC or something, something like that.
Right.
But yeah, I absolutely believe that marketing's got a seat at the table when it comes to EOS, especially if you're trying to grow a business. I don't see how you do it without that.
No question. And I think the sales also has a seat at the table and they're different
Very
seats,
much.
right? I mean, marketing is about lead generation and lead qualification, but sales is about like lead closing. Or maybe call that lead qualification and closing and getting the business. So
Oh, exactly. Like you said, the coin marketing was
yes,
coined because those two need to work hand in hand. Uh,
yeah,
other if they're not working hand in hand and cooperating, you have the salespeople. You have the marketing people saying, why aren't you closing all these leads we're generating?" And the salespeople are saying, "These leads are garbage." And now you're at odds rather than working together. And so I think they've got to have numbers and that they're looking at, but you also got to have that conversation and that cooperation of marketing working together.
I like that term. I haven't heard that before. The term I'm familiar with, a friend of mine coined in his book. He called it smallketing, and that's where small businesses merge sales and marketing into one function, not recognizing that there's a real distinction between the two.
That's
And
great.
yeah, and
I got to give credit where credit is due. And marketing would be Dan Tyre. He was one of the early guys at HubSpot, and so yeah,
uh,
another mentor. And so yeah, I always loved that expression.
all right. Well, um, Jim Muehlhausen, who wrote the 51 Fatal Business Errors and How to Avoid Them, is a book I gave out to many people, and he came up with the term, at least that I know,
I love it.
marketing. So,
Yeah.
all right. Um, let's talk a little bit about family dynamics. Uh, how do you handle disagreement inside a family business about marketing? Not your family business, but other clients. And it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be a family business. It could just be where two people who are involved in the decision don't agree on things.
Yeah, we've definitely seen it, especially we've seen people who don't appreciate, if someone's not a social media user and someone else in the business wants to try social media ads, the person doesn't understand it because they don't use Facebook. Why would anybody else, use Facebook? And so you've definitely got those challenges. And so, you know, in that situation, I would always encourage testing and say, look, let's kind of take our assumptions and maybe set those aside. Clearly, there are a lot of businesses doing well with social media ads or email or whatever it might be. why don't we do some testing and let the numbers tell us if it works for us? Maybe it doesn't work for us, but I would always encourage a spirit of testing. I know you mentioned rocks and things like that. That's a great way to just, hey, we're not committing to do this for the next 10 years. Why don't we try it for a quarter and let's see what happens? Let's see if we can get that. And then you've got real metrics, like real numbers to look at. And so you kind of, can set your assumptions aside and let the data speak.
And how do you educate the new generation or the old generation about marketing ROI?
Yeah.
Kind of a related
Uh,
question, right?
Patiently. Takes a lot of it can take a lot of patience. And so, for us, we have a lot of case studies on our website and in our slide decks when we're talking to people that kind of show them that. I'm able to take screen grabs and maybe have to blur something out, but be able to say, look, this is a client that's doing this. This is the kind of returns they're seeing, and show them that it works. And a lot of them, it's not necessarily it's somewhat fear based because they've never tried it before for their business, and they've maybe tried this other thing in the past, and their playbook is that thing that works, that thing that we do is what works for us. And so maybe not a willingness to try something else. And so anytime I can provide a case study or an example, something from the real world that says, look, I understand you've got some apprehension here, but we've seen this work, and let's maybe give it a shot, and see if we can make it work for you. And usually they'll come around.
Do you feel it's different when G2 or G3 is driving growth versus G1, generation one? Is it like they're more
So what
innovative, more risk taking, more
right now,
uh,
yeah,
it,
there is, and then
yeah.
it is for sure. And then, but we often get that usually brings the first generation around when they start seeing the revenue, the growth. They start appreciating it, and they realize we've got a winning formula here. That this is growing our business. They definitely come around, and they get excited about it, even though they may not fully understand it. They definitely get excited about it.
Do they double down on offline marketing while they're or get excited about, hey, let's do more offline marketing? I mean, it could be as simple as, hey, let's rebrand our fleet of trucks out there. And then they're getting new customers because people are seeing their trucks on the road, or they're doing whatever, bus bench advertising, billboards. I mean, you name it, television, radio spots, none of which are really that easy to track. And yet you're doing your thing. So that would be an interesting situation to have to compare
It
against.
it is what I like educating them on, maybe updated ways to do that. So this wouldn't apply to signage and things like that. But television, we've been around for 25 years. The way we run television commercials now is very different than we did, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, if I bought on cable, we worked with a CrossFit gym at the
Hmm.
time, and we shot some great commercials for them, and we put them on ESPN2 during the CrossFit games in the zip codes right around their gym. And boy, did we think we were fancy by doing that.
Yeah.
now, now it's completely different. And this comes with education, being able to explain to someone that Casey and Jonathan are neighbors, but because of all these streaming platforms, while he and I are watching the same program, we're not seeing the same commercials. He's getting targeted with things specifically for him, and I'm getting targeted with ads specifically for me based on my interests. That's what we can do with TV commercials now. It's very, very, very advanced and trackable now. Now I can essentially retarget someone. If I served their living room a TV commercial, I can retarget them on Instagram. I can track when they came to my website and made a purchase, all because I've pixeled, essentially that household. So when we start explaining that to people and it starts to click and they start to get it, they realize, okay, this technology, there's actually some really good benefits to our marketing and to our business from this technology.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I've heard some conversations around the breakfast table in a household where, they're like, we were just talking about Instagram, having a conversation. And next thing I know, I picked up my Apple phone, and all of a sudden, all these companies we were talking about, suddenly they're showing up in my feed and they're targeting me. Like, how did that happen? Are they listening to me?
It's wild, isn't it?
It's pretty crazy. All right.
When that happens in our household, my wife says, "I was looked at. Why am I getting targeted?" I just raise my hand and say, "It's my fault. That's me."
There
I'm
you go. All right. Well,
I'm one of those marketers doing that.
speaking of it's, if it's your fault, Casey, when marketing fails, who usually gets blamed?
Marketing fails. Who usually gets blamed?
Sure.
As an agency, it's almost always us, the
Of
agency.
course. But what about the person inside the company who said, we got to do this? Is it,
Yeah, I think
or maybe we should reframe this. Did anyone really fail, or is failure just feedback? And that to me would be my response. Failure is just feedback.
that goes back to that failing forward I talked about earlier. And to
Right.
me, that was a test. That was an experiment, and it didn't work. Hopefully, we didn't have all of our eggs in that basket, and hopefully, it was a test that we ran. But yeah, I think that's a healthy way to look at it. Is boy, if we were batting 1,000 in marketing, if marketers were batting 1,000, we'd be the most. We could charge whatever we wanted, but we don't. Creative, it doesn't always hit. Sometimes it's the wrong audience, the wrong platform. You got to work at all of that, and you know, up your batting average as much as you can. But you're not going to hit it out of the park every time.
Well, I agree. And I can think of few others who could reframe it better than John Maxwell, the most prolific leadership author on the planet.
You got it.
And so I like that. Fail Forward. Is that what it's called?
That's it.
All right. Well, he's got so many books, folks. You should
He does.
read one of them. My favorite was his 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, but
Good one.
they're all good. All right. As we start to wrap up here, you know, so should marketing be an expense or an investment? And I would argue for it's an investment. A lot of clients would say no, it's an expense. And I've actually even, from my own experience, oftentimes felt like it was an expense. But what you get this question often?
Uh, uh, I don't get it often, but it is in my slide deck. Whenever I kind of, whenever I always, uh, got to the pricing slide on a paper proposal or anywhere, I never listed it as the cost. I listed it as the investment.
Yeah.
And so that's my view. It has been for a long time, and that's how I look at it. I guess I look at it that way because if you do it the right way, it's going to have a return, and so that's why I look at it as an investment.
Yeah. And what about like what percent of revenue should family businesses or businesses in general allocate to marketing? And look, I think that every business is very different, right? Some businesses spend a very large amount on marketing, and some spend a very small amount. And I remember many years ago when I was reading the um, uh, income statement comparative numbers, specifically in the landscape industry. The average landscape company spent less than 1% on advertising and promotion of their revenues. And by the way, included in that 1% was branding on their trucks, uniforms that had their, all the ad specialties, the shirts and everything. But
Yeah.
what's your take? And if you, a lot of my audience listeners might be in the construction or the trades, or some might be in manufacturing, some professional services. Maybe you're going to break it down by categories, and maybe there
Yeah.
are no rules of thumb. So, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I'll speak at it more holistically. When if I'm looking at it in terms of digital marketing, and I know your NCAC is $10, my question would be, how many new customers do you want?
Mm.
That's how much you should spend. But that's kind of precise for what I do. If I was looking at it more holistically, I would say, what is your revenue currently,
Hmm.
and what are you trying to get to? So if you're see, we're trying to grow our revenue by $200,000 this year. Great. What percentage of that growth that you're looking for a $200,000 growth goal? What percentage of that are you willing to invest in marketing to make it happen?
Right.
Can you invest 10%? Can you invest 20 grand to help generate that 200,000? And usually that helps them understand. Well, we're going to have to invest something. That 200,000 is probably not going to happen on its own. Maybe you've got enough referrals, enough things that you can do to generate that. But usually, if you've got a healthy growth goal, it's going to take a marketing investment. And so I would say, what percentage of that growth goal are you willing to spend in marketing? And it should probably be at least 10% to help make that happen.
I think that's a really good one. And does it matter though by the industry? Like I pointed out that 1%. And I mean, I had a case study of a client of mine who once we realized that landscapers were spending 1, maybe 2% of their ads, he 5X'd that number. And he grew, he not only then owned the first place on Google for his
Great.
region, um, but then he didn't have to spend on the paid ads because he was showing up organically right up at the top. And he was growing so much faster. And once he got to that level of growth, then he could just rely on all the organic search and referrals and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it does vary by industry because I think you need, some businesses and industries naturally generate a lot of referrals. Some may not. And so that may depend on, where you're at right now, where you're trying to get to, and then how do new customers happen in your industry.
mm,
If it's a lot of referrals, I look at like maybe in healthcare, a specialist who gets a lot of referrals from, you know, general practitioner. They may not need a lot in terms of their marketing because they're so heavily referral based. But for most of us, referrals are great, but you can't depend on them. Our
right.
businesses don't run on them. We're very thankful when we get one, but we can't make it happen. So
Yeah.
usually it's going to take an investment. So yeah, it does vary by industry. It's really going to depend on that for sure.
Well, look, this is really a fascinating conversation. I could feel like spend another 45 minutes or an hour. I mean, marketing is a discipline of leadership. It's not just tactics, folks. And it's not just strategy either. It's the combination of the two, but it's a leadership discipline. And, you know, Casey, maybe you have a most expensive marketing mistake you've seen a business make, or a belief about marketing that people need to let go of. But, you know, give us your pitch. What do you think?
I think understanding that marketing is a combination. It's kind of half art, half science, half left brain, half right brain. I think
Mhm,
you need the creative, and you need to be willing to invest in it, and find the people who know how to tell a good story when it comes to marketing.
mhm.
But then also you need the nerds. You need me. You need the data and science people who help connect all the numbers. And you said it's just, I think leadership needs to own marketing. I think that's important,
Yeah.
rather than outsourcing it to some other department that doesn't have a seat at the table, and then just pointing fingers. I think leadership needs to own marketing, and I think that's very important.
Well, and you need to have patience, and and there has to be transparency, and someone who has the depth of what you've explained. I'm impressed. I've enjoyed this conversation. Anything you want to close up with, and then also tell us how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, no, really, I enjoyed the conversation, Jonathan. I love talking business and marketing. I can do that all day.
I, I
But yeah, if anyone wants to, if anyone wants to catch up with us, gravitydigital.com. Just go to our website. Easy ways to get in touch. You can see a little bit of our work, what we do, a couple case studies, and yeah, would love to chat with anybody, answer questions, anything marketing related. We focus on e-commerce, but at the end of the day, if I can point someone in the right direction, that's a win for me. So, would be happy to answer questions about marketing.
Yeah. So any particular types of, so companies that are already involved in e-commerce, is that what you're saying?
That's who we work with, yeah. But if something spawned a question for someone, that we talked about today, be happy to answer a question if I can.
Well, Casey, I'm sure you're a generous person at that, and I appreciate your time. And folks, like, this is about disruption. And if you're not disrupting the status quo in your business, then you're not thinking outside the box. Um, I said earlier, marketing and innovation produce results. That's what Peter Drucker, the genius business author and really coach to the top CEOs in the world over many years. I mean, marketing is an investment you have to make, along with leadership development and training. And so hopefully, if you're tuning into this, you're getting the concept that if you're doing these things, you're going to be a disruptor in your business, a good disruptor. And if it's in a family business, and you're a next generation leader, then you're a disruptive successor. And like, that's what this show is all about. So, Casey, thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jonathan.
All right. Bye for now, folks, and stay tuned. And you know the drill. If you like this show, give us a good review and a good rating on your podcast listening application of choice. Share it with others, and like and subscribe, and stay tuned for future episodes.
This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.